I'm here at Doc's Arcade. He's the guy from Rogue Synapse.com. Synapse, there we go. And he's sitting in one of his latest projects here. He's making a Star Trek the Arcade game, but it's been kind of reimagined. He's put some really neat details into this game he's creating, one of which is this really cool captain's chair that's the controller. So Doc, how long have you been working on this game?
I've been working on this on and off for over 4 years. I've done other projects in between, and then I always come back to this.
What got you interested in making this reimagining of the game?
A long time ago on MySpace, a fellow named Psychedelon and I were corresponding, and he's a modeler, and I said, you know, I always loved the original series Star Trek, and I loved the Vector game, but always wanted to play more in the original captain's chair and with the original sort of series villains. The Vector game was based on the movies, so it was my hope that I could actually do a game that would have all of the aspects of the original game, but using the original, you know, Katinga Klingons, and then also including the original Nomad with his the actual shots that he fired, and a Corbomite maneuver, and a number of the episodes, including the Balance of Terror with the Romulans that cloak and uncloak. So,
what's some of your most favorite parts of this game that you've made so far?
The ones that are the most challenging until I sort of figured out the tricks to them. The Nomad level is fun because he shoots these enormous energy bolts that you can deplete with phasers, but ultimately you kind of have to continue firing photons at him to waste him. And that gets actually, I got a little sweaty the first time I got the level done and played it. I was like, oh, that's a good level. There's a Doomsday Machine level where you have to just distract it constantly. You don't want to distract it so much that it turns its attention fully to you, but there's a wounded constellation. If you can delay it long enough, they'll repair the constellation and send it into the maw and detonate. And then the one that turned out to be my favorite was I did an original series board. Now, obviously there's no original series board, but it's got all the sort of Christmas lights look of the original series, and it has the laser, and it fires torpedoes, and then also gravimetric mines. And that's just a really colorful and fun and sort of harried level.
How long have you been working on this project?
It's been about 4 years. It's still in a beta phase. There's still issues with timing and some of the things that I'm still working on. Attract mode. Still need to finish out diagnostic mode. But it's come together quite a bit in the past few months. I kind of got the chair within the year, and then there was a party last month that was for prop collectors, and I wanted to debut this there, so I got a working version kind of.
So what's the story behind this game here called Polybius?
I got this from a collector about 5 years ago. I guess they got it from an Oregon arcade way back in the day. Now, among the games that I thought probably should be real, but were not, is Polybius, and of course it's based on a urban legend of a mind control video game. And we released it actually a while back, and released it as a Halloween release, and it was a viral Easter egg on the site. So you can still get to the rabbit hole on the site. If you go to the arcade and go to the arcade pictures, you'll see a Polybius picture, and if you go on it, there's a geographic link over the cabinet. You have to enlarge it and then go over the geographic link, and it'll take you into the download pages. And we released it as kind of a joke, and did a whole website with Sinneschlossen. Actually wound up doing an LLC with Sinneschlossen, trademarking both. I'll wait for a second.
The trio nodes are difficult to navigate.
Go ahead. Just talk loud.
Anyway, we actually wound up buying a LLC, and it's an actual LLC for Sinneschlossen, and that's the major LLC that Rogue Synapse is now under, and then also got the trademark for Sinneschlossen and Polybius. So if people searched it, they would find that Polybius was indeed owned by Sinneschlossen. And the game is based very much on the various parts of it that were put out there on the web, and we tried to do a combination of vector and raster graphics, which, you know, at the time was quite impossible, still is, except with emulation. Tried to incorporate any screenshots that were out there, and then the rest is all original gameplay. There's elements of math to it, so polygons come out of a central sort of, it's actually a Metatron, which is a symbol. It's not, I think people think it's a satanic symbol. It's not. It's an ancient Greek symbol. It contains all of the various 3D polygons, and from that other polygons come that have numbers, and they're small numbers that circle it. If you can match the numbers or make it divisible by one of the small polygons, or if you can hit a square root, that advances the game. And once you get the numbers in the Metatron down to 0, you go to the next level. In terms of sort of the mind control elements, I incorporated a lot of just existing sort of technology and optical effects, optical imprinting, very simple things that should be pretty harmless. I did put in entrainment loops, so if you're into 70s and 80s tech, there are entrainment loops you can hear in the background that range from everything from true entrainment loops to sort of a Roman Polanski bees in the background, which should heighten anxiety when you play. The game has a full set of diagnostic menus that if you get into, there's a code that you have to get into to get the higher cognitive functions menu, and there's a ton of toggles. The only one that's really, I think, some control volume of entrainment, things like that. But the one that's the only particular concern I had was the strobe effect, which obviously with any video game you worry about seizures. We tried to do the strobing so it would not do that, but that's the only one that comes disabled in the download. But the game has everything on it, including poltergeist functions, so it'll, if you leave it on in your arcade, you can shut off the sound and it'll whisper and laugh occasionally. It even has a false, if you build the computer right, it has a false off. So if you plug it into a ground plug and run your cord out, it'll look like it's unplugged and running. And if you turn it off with the false off, after a while it'll turn itself back on, which is cool. Other than that, I did try and make it kind of fun. The original game was felt to be a version of Tempest that had the screen moved rather than the player, and that induced nausea. So the game does actually spin the whole game when you move your player. It's optically complex enough that it doesn't really cause nausea. There are a few that it might, but overall it just turned out to be kind of a fun project. It's amazing how many people think this is the real, Polybius. I had people as recently as this month email me asking for the actual ROM to the original Polybius, and so we'll be connecting it to the site pretty soon. People kind of figured out we were the same guys.
Cool. I see you also have a Space Paranoids from Tron in your arcade as well.
So, indeed, this was the very first game I did. It was when I was just learning. I programmed in Dark Basic, which is a very primitive language, but I'm an old guy, so I learned it a long time ago and continue to use it. But ultimately, this was my first project, and I was very happy with it at the time, and still am. It still plays well, but it doesn't look quite exactly like the film. This came out, I guess, at least 10 years ago, before the Tron film and before the Tron viral campaign released the Space Paranoids that was in the Flynn's arcade at Comic-Con and then ultimately at Disneyland. This one plays multiple levels, including a number of environments that have elements from the film, along with the original sort of level that you see in the movie itself.
So here's another creation that Doc has. It's Astro Gunner by Incom from the Tron movie. When did you create this game?
I did this over the past year or two. It's basically based on the Incom postcards that came out with the Tron Legacy and the new Tron film. And I'd like to do at least 3 of them, Vice Squad and then probably Arc.
Was Matrix
Arc Wars.
Blaster one? Oh.
Matrix Blaster, perhaps. The nice thing about them is there's no substrate, so you can kind of do what you want. It's just a picture. Vice Squad I like because it looks like a futuristic spy hunter, and it'll probably be a sort of high-tech spy hunter with vector and raster graphics. And then this, I always thought would be Incom's version of Asteroids. You play it in a 3D field against sort of flying saucers, and it tried to capture everything the graphics on the postcard and then take it to the level that you're flying through, space.
How long did it take you to create this cabinet?
This one probably off and on was about 6 months of work, all totaled. And I did it again for a prop party, I think 2 years ago, and presented it there for people who make movie props, and this was a Tron-related prop. So, and in fact, it was funny. I took it to the party, and nobody knew it was a prop. They thought it was an original game, and everybody swore they'd played it before. And I said, no, I mean, maybe you've played Tail Gunner, maybe you've played Asteroids Deluxe.
That's what it reminded me of, was Tail Gunner. I was thinking that while I was playing it.
I tried. I love the old Cinematronics vectors, and I love Tail Gunner. I don't have a Tail Gunner, but certainly remember many quarters in the arcade playing it, and I love the continuous loop of stars, and that's one of the things I put in here. years back, some guys out of New York contacted me about an idea for a evil video game film. They had seen basically some of the stuff we'd done online, Space Paranoids at that time, and Starfighter, and asked if I would be willing to do a cabinet for an indie game, and kind of wanted an evil video game that addicted the player and then sucked them into the game. And what came of it was this. It's a Lovecraftian arcade game, and all of the creatures in it are either complex shapes, like odd sort of polygons that move around, and creatures are sort of like, if you read H.P. Lovecraft, like Shoggoth, and sort of worm-like creatures with spinning stoma that attack you, and giant sort of animated flying birds. It's a combination of vector and raster graphics, so it's pretty colorful, and the environments are quite unusual. The cool thing about it was actually made for the film, and we did film it. Now, the film never made it out of the can, unfortunately, but it had director's controls. The game goes from third person above to tight third person above, sort of a close quarters thing, and then finally to behind the player and then first person. And it gradually moves that way through, I don't know how many levels and environments. I think there's at least 8 individual enemies, and they're all sort of spooky. And the whole thing was supposed to be kind of scary. When the movie was released, people were supposed to get a free copy of the game, plus what they needed to make the cabinet if they wanted to do their own marquee, and if they wanted to do their own CPO. It never left the can, and so probably this year I'll see if Fantastic Arcade would be willing to accept it as an entry. It really wasn't playable when it was there for the movie. You could play a few levels. I've completed the levels, and there's a high score table now, and kind of a number of cool features that I think will now probably put it out on the site for download, because I don't think the movie will come out. It was fun. We went to Fun Spot and filmed for a week there, and got to hang out and have beers and play games all week, so it was pretty awesome. It does, or it should, this is synced up, should run off this. You can get out into the game. It had a full set of director's controls, so my back fell. But once you got in there, you could set it up for face directions that allowed you to animate the face you see at the beginning. He would approach and his eyes would light up. You could lock it on the laughing face. You had a number of things. So for the character to interact with the screen, it's booting up again, but for the character to interact with the screen, they actually had a number of parts where the machine was speaking, and it would stop on the right face and laugh or sneer and so on. And then I booted out, but it also had controls that the director could use to basically make the player invincible. You could control the player from here. You could force the player to die. It had a clipboard that would tell you exactly which level it was, which frame, and which enemies were present, so that you could duplicate the footage later, at least enough so that it would look coherent. And the idea was that the game you saw being played was the game being played. And so for those levels, it was cool. Basically, it's a 3D game, but the camera angle could change pretty quickly to tight overhead, which is my favorite. If you fell, it took you into the... This is an old Zybots joystick that's kind of getting sticky, so I've had to clean it even yesterday. It seems like it's sticking again. And it would lock where you were, and you could go to first person and then to first person. And when you were in 3D, you would need to go up and down to attack the characters. You have basically a character fires, spins entirely, can fly, has a shield, and then there's a lightning sort of a hand of God effect, which is lightning that'll come down and strike everything on the field that's attacking you.
For some reason, I want to buy this.
Hey, you want a Nintendo glove? Oh, now you're playing with power.
So I see in the corner of your room here, you have a time machine. Can you tell us a little bit about this, where it came from?
I bought a lot of props over the years from Fred Barton, and I saw this in his collection, and we've gotten to be friends over the years, and I always loved it, and sort of said, if you ever want to get rid of that, let me know. And so one year he called, and I bought it some years ago, actually, 6 years ago or more, and he called and said, well, I'll sell it to you, and it actually took me a little time to pay it off, but I got it from him.
And this was on the Big Bang Theory?
Yes, about a year, after I had sort of paid it off and was expecting to ship it, I wound up moving and wound up in a pretty small apartment and asked Fred to hold on to it until such time that I could actually set it up in a home. And during that time, I guess the Big Bang Theory contacted him and said, we understand you have a time machine we'd like to borrow. And he called me and said they'd like to do it for a show. And at that time I thought it was an educational show. I hadn't seen the show at all. I said, well, it's fine if they use it. It'll add provenance. It didn't, it was a replica prior to that. So he took it there. And of course, I hadn't seen the show. Now I watch the show religiously. It's one of my favorites of that we watch as a family. And of course, they shipped the thing to us a year or so after the episode aired. We got into this house and shipped it out. And no sooner than he shipped it than Chuck Lorre called in and asked if he could borrow it for promo shots. I was sort of like, we'll ship it back as long as we can, hang out with the crew for for a week or so.
Good point.
So, but anyway, we love it, and I love old sci-fi's 1950s, 1960s era. I have all the pieces to it. I've been a little careful about putting it out because it's hard to affix some of the sort of the greeblies that would go on this thing, little fronds and so on. They keep falling off, and I'm very worried they're going to break. And I don't really want to use screws to put in. I think we're on our 5th iteration of things to secure it to the chair. So we've just kind of left it bare because it's very sturdy and nothing will bust.
If you'd like to see more of Doc's awesome creations and movie memorabilia, head over to his website at roguesandapps.com. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.